Okay, wonderful. Okay, so welcome everyone to the workshop, How to Improve Stress from the Inside Out, learning nervous system regulation tools to shift from stress to balance. And this workshop is hosted by the Contemplative Practices in Education Initiative, which is housed under the Center for the Advancement of Teaching. And we have our senior director here today, Leanne Wells. I'm Eliana Hernandez, an assistant director for the center and a co-founder of the initiative. The other co-founders here, Paul Feigenbaum, hello. And I'll be around moderating the discussion and the Q&A and learning alongside all of you. It's an honor to have Dr. Eva Catherine Coder facilitate today's workshop. So the idea of the workshop stemmed from, I would say, an acknowledgement that many folks are struggling right now. As Eva, mentioned, I keep hearing that we're at or close to epidemic levels when it comes to anxiety, depression, and like loneliness and burnout. And for many of us, that's not like a statistic. It's what we're living. And while there is a focus in the workshop of what this means in terms of learning environments and educator student interactions, I do want to make it clear that it's not only about that. We hope that it's also a way to support you, this whole person, not just you, the educator. And I couldn't think of anyone more suited to facilitate today's workshop than Dr. Eva Catherine Coder, who I've had the pleasure of knowing and learning from for a couple of years now. And there's just so much to say about Eva, but I'll keep it short, even though I know I won't do her and her work justice. She wears many, many hats. I'll just name a few. She's an author, a licensed transpersonal psychologist, a trauma teacher and counselor, a nervous system specialist. And I'm always amazed at her wisdom and how she just embodies empathy and compassion, and her commitment to supporting and empowering others in this journey we call life, to have more balance and wholeness. It's been so evident to me, and I trust that you'll see that for yourself today. And with that, I will pass it over to Emma.
Thank you, Eliana, for that sweet introduction. I feel very grateful to be presenting to all of you at FIU. My journey in Miami started at the University of Miami, doing a master's program there after my PhD, which was one of these things that somehow when you're in a doctoral program, you think it might be a great idea to get another master's afterwards. And I ended up transitioning into adjunct teaching there for a while and serving on a research team. So I have had a tiny bit of experience in maybe some of your shoes. So I'm hoping to bring that to our time together today. And let's see. So I do have slides to present. And what I want to say before I share my screen and open that part of the presentation is I just want to invite you, we're probably going to be together today for, between 90 minutes and 2 hours. It just depends on how long our presentation goes. I wanted to have plenty of space for questions and interaction and things like that to support everyone here. But while you're here, as much as you can, if you can, I know some people are doing two things at once right now, but if you can commit to letting some of those other things go, just for the next 90 minutes or so, kind of put away maybe devices or email or whatever else might be happening. I know you're all multitasking probably a lot of the time, but this truly is a time for you. And I'm hoping that I can really invite you into the space so that you can want to spend time connecting today with me, but also with each other, and really getting a lot out of our time together that you can take with you both in your personal life, in your professional life, and just day to day. I know that for me, when I started studying the nervous system about officially 5 years ago, training in somatic experiencing, et cetera, and polyvagal theory, working with my clients, I got so much out of the work personally for myself. I have a 5-year-old son. I'm working with him around his regulation and noticing when he's dysregulated and how to help him get back in balance. And so some of the tools that we'll be learning today, you can use very widely throughout your life. So that is my hope and my wish for each of you. I'm going to share my screen. Hoping everyone can see this. And our topic today is really, how can we improve our stress from the inside out? We live in the modern world, which is a 24-hour news cycle and all kinds of information that's coming at us all the time, which is difficult to deal with. Even our very near ancestors did not deal with email. I kind of sometimes wistfully, nostalgically long for the days of writing letters, where it took weeks for the letter to arrive and then maybe weeks for the letter to come back. And in between that time, you just had time, to do other things. And so I think our brains and our nervous systems and our bodies really haven't evolved to the information age. And that is just something that feels very obvious and factual at this point. And we do not do well as humans having so much information coming at us all the time. So we do have that situation, and we need to bootstrap ourselves a bit to figure out how to deal with it effectively so that we don't live in states of chronic stress and burnout and feel awful a lot of the time, right? So we're going to be learning some tools around nervous system regulation that help us shift from stress to balance. Stress is part of life, and yet we don't want it to be our whole life. All right. So what I'm going to be sharing next are a few images. And what I want to invite each of you to do is just feel into this image for yourself. Just kind of notice, like, what do I feel when I see this image? Do I remember a time where I was in that moment? Whatever music that is that would be playing that you would be really enjoying and moving to and really feeling at a deep level and just kind of letting go. So I'm inviting you to check into your own body. Like, what does that feel like in my body? Mhm. All right, good, everyone. And if you want to write anything in the chat, you can reflect like how this feels to you, even the image or maybe a memory that you have yourself of being in this kind of environment, and this kind of enjoyment. You can just share whatever comes up for you. All right, and we're gonna move to another image. And, for this image, I really want you to think about maybe another memory of a time when you were with a friend, a close friend, maybe a family member, and you were just laughing and having fun. It's what that feels like. The one thing I do miss about Miami for sure is that people know how to have a good time. It is important in Miami to have fun and to laugh and just to let go. And that's such a beautiful thing. So when you connect in your own body, just notice how you feel inside. Great. And you're welcome to share anything you'd like to share in the chat. Might have Eliana share a little bit about what's in the chat for me.
Yeah, just about how the emotions that we're seeing are, can be so contagious. Like these smiles are so beautiful, and there's so much joy, and it can be contagious. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And you can even notice like what's happening in your own face when you see a smile like this. Like, is there some little tug even on your cheeks where you just want to smile back? Just noticing how our bodies respond. This is very important for our well-being. Okay, good. So we're going to move on to another image. It's going to be very different, but I'm going to invite you, same thing. Just notice how you feel when you see the image. This may be a place that's familiar to you. It may not be familiar to you. There are so many beautiful places on our earth. It's very hard to choose a couple of images, but just notice like when you see the sea or when you see those cliffs or those colors, like how you feel. You might notice like your heart rate changing, even, or your breath, the way that you're breathing, maybe that changes a little bit. And you're welcome to reflect in the chat, just sharing what happens for you.
I have hear this. They can hear the sound, smell the air. Makes me want to deep breathe. Sorry, makes me want to take like a deep breath.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same. I felt my breathing started deepening and regulating a bit more. I can almost feel the waves like hitting the cliff in a way, and all the spray that happens as the wave hits the cliff. Yeah, we are so sensory oriented, right? Where our senses are these amazing, powers that we have, and they really can alter how our body is functioning. They do alter how our body is functioning at a physiological level. Just noticing the thanks for your reflections. I'm really appreciating those. And we have one last image, and same thing. We're gonna just see how does this image make me feel? What happens for me when I see it? Yeah, thank you for reflecting and tuning in. So a lot of this nervous system work really is about tuning into ourselves. What's happening for me right now? What do I feel? What do I sense in myself? Very important skill, proprioception. Attuning to ourselves. Yeah, thank you for reflecting and adding to the chat. It might be the colors in this image. It might be the water. It might be the quality of the light, or all of it. Just noticing how your body shifts in response. There might be memories that come up for you. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah. Eliana, anything in the chat you feel you want to draw out?
Yeah, so much peace, like relaxation. As somebody wrote heaven, exclamation mark, just enjoying the sunset, being in the moment, imagining the waves, loving the colors. I want to dig my toes in the sand, warm water and breeze. It's hard not to be in the moment in this place. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, everyone. So appreciate all those reflections. And, if we didn't know better, we might think our natural world was almost entirely designed to keep us happy and healthy and regulated with all the beauty that we can tune into in any given moment. It's here. We live on it. We live with it. It's here. So thank you for just taking this just initial opportunity to connect. And, so much of this work around regulation, which is a huge hot topic right now, all the influencers are talking about it. Regulation, staying regulated, nervous system regulation as the new superpower, so to speak. And so much of staying regulated and being regulated is even knowing what we feel to begin with and what we sense. There's feeling, which could mean an emotion that I'm feeling, right? I feel sad, happy, contented, peaceful, angry, or, there's a feel of like what's happening in my body. Oh, my heart's beating really fast, or I feel really hot, or I feel really cold, or I feel tingly, or I have waves moving through me, or my chest feels tight, or, sometimes it's like someone's pressing on my chest, or people will feel pain in a certain area. And a lot of that's our sensory awareness and how we kind of tune into what's happening inside of us. And this information of what's happening inside of us is so key in terms of staying healthy and happy, and learning what to do, how to intervene when we feel like we're kind of going off the rails a bit, or we're too far in one direction or another. I hope that makes sense. You're welcome to just reflect in the chat too. We're going to be diving in deeper now into our material. So what are we here for? I'm getting very official with you all. So our objectives today are really going through and discussing these three key aspects of our autonomic nervous system, and we'll talk about what that is. And from polyvagal theory, we now understand since the mid-90s or so that there are three main aspects of our autonomic nervous system, which include our ventral vagal, dorsal vagal, and sympathetic branches. And I'm going to talk about what each of those are in detail. So don't worry about that now. We're going to talk about how we experience each of those three branches. And we're very sophisticated beings. So we also experience combinations of these branches, right? So things can get a little bit more complex, but we'll talk about that. And we're going to talk about specific strategies to lower levels of activation so that we can kind of come into a more balanced, peaceful place. And we're going to do some experiential, just like we just did. That was your toe in the water. We're going to do a few more experiential immersions to have you feel through how to regulate yourself better. And then we're going to talk about how we can apply this for our student body and our student interactions. You know, not only are faculty probably chronically stressed, we have student bodies that are chronically stressed. And I'm sure you're all seeing that both virtually and in person. So we're going to go dive into all of this today. So let's just kind of start. We're going to go big picture. What is our nervous system, right? I have this image of kind of a plant with roots and branches and things like this. And this is very evocative of our own nervous system, with all of the different nerves that are connected and all of the nerve endings and that are connected to these sort of major nerves. And when we think about our nervous system, it really does look like a tree in some way, shape, or form, or roots. So we have in the back of our brainstem, we have our 10th cranial nerve called the vagus nerve, and that's kind of our main nerve. It's called the wandering nerve. So it goes from the back of the brainstem and it travels down, and it has nerve endings that innervate or activate all of our kind of face muscles. I'm kind of big on the eyebrows. You'll notice that my vagus nerve is doing that for me. So it innervates our face. It regulates this kind of upper thoracic area, lower thoracic area, kind of our guts, our viscera, so to speak. It is talking to all of our organs and transmitting messages from our organs back to our brainstem, where all of this information, not only the information from around us, the information inside of us, so both inner and outer information, is being read and synthesized by our nervous system, and then our body is taking certain actions based on that information, most of which is entirely subconscious or unconscious to us. So when we talk about our nervous system, we're really talking about, for today, we're talking about our autonomic nervous system. And when we say autonomic, what we're talking about is automatic. So these are the things that are happening without us needing to do anything. So we would not want to be thinking about making our heart beat. We would not want to be thinking about making ourselves breathe. We do need to have a lot of our bodies working on autopilot so that these things are happening below consciousness. They're out of our control. We don't have to do them ourselves, because we would have never survived as a species if we had to do all of these things all the time. We need some things to happen automatically. I hope that makes sense to everyone. So things like digestion and some of these deeper states of relaxation where our body's taking in nutrients. These are very critical parts of our well-being that our autonomic nervous system is regulating all of the time. Sleep. We would not make it very far without sleep, as I'm sure most of you know. So our nervous systems have evolved from approximately 500 million years ago. So the nervous system began in primitive sea creatures, our ancient ancestors, 500 million years ago, and has evolved, through all these different waves of evolution, reptiles and mammals, and now us, the sort of sentient species, so to speak, along with maybe a couple of others like whales or dolphins, or it depends on how you're oriented, but some think we're not the only ones at the top of the food chain, so to speak, in evolution. In any case, primitive sea creatures had a very basic capacity, which was kind of a stop and a start. So if something came up in their environment that seemed threatening or concerning, their nervous system, very primitive nervous system, would just guide them to stop. So they would stop moving. And then when the threat or whatever was in the environment that felt threatening in some way, whenever that shifted, they would then continue to swim along. So that is where our nervous systems began. And we still today retain that functionality. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. Our nervous systems, through all of these waves of evolution, have become very sophisticated, where they are not only regulating these basic functions for life, but they're now regulating in our human family, they're regulating our ability to connect with each other. And we thrive on connection. We co-regulate each other through conversation, through interaction, through touch, even across many miles. Hearing the voice of a kindred soul to you can help your nervous system relax. So we're all the time, we're in our ideal sense, we are helping each other stay regulated and stay well. So there's a lot of sophistication in the nervous system. And one thing that we really need to understand about it, however, is that our nervous systems are primarily driven around the idea of survival. So your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, doesn't so much care if you are thriving or feeling your best self or feel like you're on purpose in your life and in love with life. That is not what the nervous system is really designed to do. It is designed to help you survive. And this is very important because this is a moment where we kind of give ourselves a break when we feel like we're not doing well psychologically or what have you, or we're overly stressed and depleted. The nervous system is just interested in helping you survive. So as long as you are surviving, as long as you're living, your heart's beating, you're continuing to breathe, then your nervous system has checked a lot of boxes off, right? So it's interested in threats to your survival, very interested in that, and defending against threats and moving you out of places that feel threatening. But this is all survival driven, okay? And we've had some, as I alluded to before and mentioned before, we've had some upgrades in our thinking around our nervous systems. So around the mid-90s, Stephen Porges started coming out with his polyvagal theory. And he was doing a lot of anatomical research. He was doing research with infants, babies. He's now done tons of research with autistic kids, autistic people, and really learning about nervous system regulation, dysregulation, how the nervous system works. And what he discovered has really revolutionized not only physiology, right, the domains of physiology, but also psychology and healing and some of these tangential realms of therapy, et cetera, for how to help people deal with trauma, fields of traumatology. So in the olden days when I went to school, we had two branches of the nervous system. We had a parasympathetic branch, and we thought of parasympathetic as mostly relaxation based. And we had a sympathetic branch. which was focused around fight or flight. So we kind of, most of us in some sense, depending on how old you are and when you went to school, you have some ideas about the nervous system being parasympathetic and sympathetic. And what we know now is that things are a little bit more complicated, that what Stephen Porges discovered when he, looked at the brainstem and how all the nerves were designed and where they all went, he understood that there were not one branch of the parasympathetic, but two. So we have an ancient dorsal vagal branch of the nervous system from our ancient primitive sea creature relatives, which is the freeze response. That is our oldest, most archaic, most deep, hardwired response pattern in a state of threat is to freeze. Okay. Now, then through evolution, what has occurred is, especially sort of where we are now in our human family, we have a second branch of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is called ventral vagal. So we have dorsal vagal, which is the oldest, that's freeze. And then we have ventral vagal, which is the newest. And that's all about social connection. It's hardwiring us into our social world and helping us regulate ourselves and helping us survive better based on a human connection. And it's not just human connection, it's connection to our greater world. So the connection to nature, connection to our pets, our animal beloveds and friends. And I would dare say, as a transpersonal psychologist, even our connection to the divine or source or God. For some people, that's irrelevant, and that's fine too. But for some of us, we do have a connection to something greater, and that does help us stay regulated. So we have these now two branches of the parasympathetic nervous system, and we also have still the sympathetic. But our understanding of this sympathetic branch, which historically we would say fight or flight, we've now updated it from the fields of clinical psychology and traumatology to understand that there are other patterns of threat response in the sympathetic branch beyond fight or flight. So we talk about fight, flight, flee, hide. A lot of these are related. I think hide, flee, and flight all feel pretty related to me, but we do differentiate between them now. And we have another response pattern called fawn. And some of you, depending on, trends that you're following or what you're reading, you might already know about these response patterns, and you may not. So for those of you that are not aware, some of them are obvious. Flight is getting away from a threat, right? Hiding is also getting away from a threat in a particular way. Fleeing, same. That's why I feel like they're all kind of lumped together, those ones. But fawn is very different. So fawn is a very relational activation pattern around threat, where we are nice to the person that's threatening us. We want to be really nice to them. We want to learn what triggers them. We don't want to do things that set them off. And we see this response pattern in men and women, but we all, women are socialized into it more often than men, who are socialized more towards fight usually. But women also can be socialized into fight. So there's no, hard and fast rules about any of this, as I'm sure you all are aware. But fawn comes in often in situations where we can't really get away from a person that's threatening us. Maybe we're married to them, maybe we have children with them, maybe it's just not that easy for some reason to separate from them. Sometimes children learn this with their parents. They can't just move out at the age of 4 or 5, live on their own. So we learn these patterns of dealing with threat response. I hope this is clear to you all, and you're welcome to, if you have a question about anything, you could post in the chat. Ileana could let me know as well if there's something coming up around this. But we're like we've moved past putting our toe in the water. We're now kind of like a couple 2 or 3 feet into the water here. So Deb Dana, who's one of the principal thought leaders in polyvagal-based therapy, it kind of came up with this ladder. And I know many of us are visual. I'm very visual as well. And we can kind of think of these branches of the nervous system along a ladder. You know, the oldest bottom of the ladder would be our dorsal vagal, our freeze response, our primitive 500 million year ago ancestor. And then as we evolved into adding this sympathetic fight or flight, fawn, flee, freeze, hide response. It's kind of sort of in the middle of the ladder. And this is another way to deal with threat that's more evolved than just the freeze response, right? And then as we've evolved even further now, where the highest point on the ladder would be our ventral vagal. This is our connection, social connection, human connection, connection to the world. All right. Okay, so now we're gonna take an even deeper dive in a way into some of these response patterns and the way our nervous systems work and how we feel when we're in certain parts of our nervous system are activated. So I just want to make sure, let me just check, Ileana, is there a question about anything that I've covered so far?
Yes, there's a question about fawn. Is fawn related to freeze?
Well, they're all related because they're all patterns of threat response. I hope that makes sense. But freeze and fawn would be considered different patterns of threat response, but you could do both because we're multi-talented. So there could be moments, for instance, in an interaction with someone who is threatening to us, where we freeze. Like we lose our words, we can't speak, we feel maybe our mind goes blank, we might feel confused. We're going to get into this a little bit more, but just to answer your question. And also, when we kind of pop out of that freeze for that next moment, we might then be trying to fawn. And does that answer your question? I just want to get a sense of if that was helpful or not.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So this is a lot of information on this slide. I just want to acknowledge that. And I also want to invite you, as I'm presenting this material, to think about yourself, right? You could think about yourself. You could think about your children if you have children, your partner if you have a partner, or people that you've known, family members. I want you to start relating to the information if you haven't already, kind of tracking. Oh, where have I seen this before? What does this feel like when it happens to me? So this is a portrait, let's say, of a healthy nervous system. A nervous system that is functioning in a regulated way in response to threat. So as you see on the left-hand side, you see the arrow that goes up. And so that's designating increasing levels of threat. So what that means is that our sensory system, our nerve endings, both inside, connecting to our internal organs, parts of our body, and connecting to our outside world, are detecting threat. Something is happening. That could be someone honking behind you as you're, or on the road somewhere. It could be an email that you got that you didn't like, or a text message that didn't feel good, or a piece of news that comes out, right? In our glorious 24-hour news cycle. Could be a number of different things. It could be that the sun went behind the cloud and we have seasonal affective disorder and that bothers us. Depending on one's level of sensitivity, a number of things could feel threatening. So I want you to notice that arrow, and I also want you to notice this bell-shaped black curved line that goes up and then down. You're also going to notice 3 sections. So our very bottom section is the ventral vagal, which is our social engagement. It's kind of responding to connection and connecting with humans and other living beings in our world. The middle section is going to be our sympathetic arousal state. And we're talking in this diagram, they're simplifying to fight or flight. And then the very top, you'll notice the red band, and that's our dorsal vagal system. That's our freeze response. So just in a macro bird's eye pass, what we're seeing here is that when the threat level increases, our nervous system starts activating itself, and it will activate itself in response to the level of threat. So what happens initially, let's just say we're in the green, we're feeling calm, we're feeling good, we're feeling connected, maybe there's contentment there, we have the capacity to feel curious and open. These are lovely times that we spend in the green, these experiences that we have there. We can feel mindful. We have the experience of being in the present moment. Like, I'm just here, in this moment. I'm not 20 minutes away or 20 minutes behind, or, just here, this experience of here and now. And hopefully some of you had those experiences when we were looking at the first pictures that I shared. Some of you may have moved into some of this green, this ventral vagal, the connection, right? So here we are, we're feeling safe, right? That's a hallmark of being in this green band, is that we feel safe. And just think for yourself for a moment. When you feel safe, how are you? How do you talk to others? Or how do you feel inside? Just want to touch into that for a moment. I feel safe. When I feel safe, you can fill in that blank. All right, so we're going on a journey. We're journeying through our nervous system. We're starting with safety. How that feels, right? Maybe you feel relaxed, open. Your body, you can notice when you start to feel safe, sometimes what happens is that certain sections of your body will start relaxing or shifting. You didn't even realize maybe there was tension until there was relaxation. And then you realized, oh, I was holding some tension in my chest because, wow, now I can take a full breath, and I couldn't take a full breath before. So these are some hallmarks, and you're welcome to share in the chat any feelings you have when you feel safe. Yeah, thank you for connecting. Yeah, and at any time, Eliana, if you want to share anything there, you're welcome to. That feels like it would be good to share.
Yeah. So calm, more open, grateful. Like time has slowed down a bit. Yeah. Restful.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, grateful. Like when we don't feel threatened or that we're under threat, we then have time for some of these other wonderful experiences that are available to us in life. You might feel grateful, loving. Sometimes we can even move into places of wonder or awe. I don't know about you all, but I'm not looking at every single photo from the James Hubble telescope, but they get passed around, and sometimes I just see these images of all these galaxies, and they're just stunning. It's like this wow. And thank God, we have enough safety at times in our lives where we can feel these things. They're so integral to our humanness. Yes. So thank you for sharing. And, you know, I'll get into this in a bit later, but the point is not to stay in green all the time. That's not the goal. Okay. So I want to alleviate you of any concern that you may have about that. Although it does sound really nice to be there a lot of the time, even, we are designed to be there a lot of the time. So as there's a threat that comes in, this could be something that feels very minor. This could be something that feels more major. The threat comes in, then our nervous system goes, okay, let's get going. We need to mobilize energy because we need to deal with this threat because we need to survive. So what initially kicks off is the sympathetic arousal. And that's assuming we're starting in green, okay? Because we have people that live at very high states of that yellow band, and their first move is into freeze. So they're not really starting from green. They're starting from much higher up, and then they move into the red state. But having said that, let's just, in the more simplistic form, what happens when we're feeling more relaxed and then a threat comes in is that we start feeling some of these low level emotions or sensations of fight or flight, right? We start feeling a little irritated or a little worried, a little frustrated. Maybe we might say, oh, I feel a little anxious. Okay, so your note to yourself, right? Something I want you to remember is that as soon as you feel any of these low level states of sympathetic arousal, which might feel very minor, because like how often do we feel a little frustrated or irritated? We might feel that frequently. But that when you feel those things, that your nervous system has shifted you into sympathetic arousal. You're there. You are in the yellow. And what that means is that your nervous system has detected a threat or a number of threats to you, and it has shifted you there to deal with that threat. It's not that you are a bad person or incapable of being nice or responding well or any of these things, like stories we tell ourselves. It's not that. It's that your nervous system, which wants you to survive, has detected a threat or multiple threats and has pushed you into mobilizing to deal with the threat. That's what's really happening. And I hope that makes sense. Please let me know if for any reason that does not make sense to you. And Eliana, if you could let me know if there's any questions about that. So I'm going to say a little bit more about sympathetic arousal. When we are in this yellow band, it means that our nervous system, based on all the information it's receiving, internal and external, feels confident that we can deal with this threat. We can. It's a feeling of, I can do something about this. Like, oh, I got that email. I can respond to that email. Maybe I should think about it for 10 minutes before I do, but I can respond. Or, oh, that person almost ran into me on the road. I can move my car out of the way so I don't get hit, right? I can do something about it. And our nervous system is pushing us to do something about it by mobilizing our energy. In sympathetic arousal, we get a lot of blood flow. In fight, we get a lot of blood flow to our chest, upper arms, right? Because we're evolutionarily, we're gearing up to fight. Even if now we're sending an email, we're still getting a lot of blood flow going to our arms. If our nervous system wants us to instead flee and have a flight response, we'll get a lot of blood flow to our legs, right? A lot of energy will go to our legs. And so you'll notice in states of sympathetic arousal, you'll feel tight sometimes in your chest, or you'll feel tight in your shoulders or your arms or your legs. You'll feel some tension come in. And that's the energy is mobilizing to deal with the threat. Okay, that's what's happening there. Now, if the threat increases, the body continues to feel like, oh, this is a worse threat than we thought. It's a very high level of threat. It's going to mobilize tons of energy. And that's going to look like things that we really dislike: rage, intense levels of anger, panic attacks, etc. We're going to start feeling all those things if we feel very threatened. That's by design, on purpose, so that we can deal with what's happening. Either we can get away from it, or we can face it head on and deal with it directly. We're either moving towards the threat or we're moving away from the threat. One of those things we're trying to do. Now, fawn is a kind of a hybrid, right? Because we can't really get away from the threat. So we're trying to figure out an alternate way to deal with it that doesn't involve fighting, because often that can go badly, right? That can become even more threatening to us. So fawn is a bit of a hybrid way to deal with certain kinds of relational threats for the most part. So this is all in the realm of I can. And you're saying, I'm having panic attacks. Is that really I can? It feels like I can't. But what's happening is your nervous system just trying to get you away from something that feels threatening. Okay. Now, when the nervous system and all the information it's compiling, all this information from the internal and the external, maybe it's the amount of resource that you have available. If you're sick or not doing well physiologically, you may have less resource available to deal with threat, right? Then when the nervous system detects that it can't do anything about the threat, it can't move towards it, it can't move away from it, it's stuck with it, then what happens is that our nervous systems push us to the most archaic, hardwired freeze response, which is, if you look at the animal kingdom, of playing dead, right? So you've seen probably in these animal shows or whatever, a fawn that almost gets captured, or a mouse or something, or even I even saw it in my own house. I had mice at one point in grad school, and my cat would play with them, and it was disgusting, but something I had to deal with. But the mouse would play dead, and you would think it was dead, and then my cat would get really disinterested in it and just drop it. And then a few minutes later, the mouse pops up and runs off, right? So this has been evolutionary. This response has been selected as something that can work sometimes in the very worst cases when death is imminent, okay? When you are in dorsal vagal, you will not like it for the most part. It feels like depression. It feels like helplessness, hopelessness. You're trapped. Sometimes you actually will dissociate. You feel like you're out of your body. Sometimes it's a numbing feeling. Now, what's happening internally, however, is that as a kind of gift to you in this approaching death experience, your body will dump tons of endogenous a kind of a internal morphine, essentially, of painkillers. It will dump tons of these, like equivalent to like 8 milligrams of morphine into your system. So while you're going into freeze, your body will flood you with kind of these really nice pain reducing feelings, chemicals, so that you don't really have to feel how bad it really is. You don't really have to feel how bad the threat is, right? Your body's kind of giving you a little bit of grace there. So your pain threshold can increase quite significantly because you're being flooded, essentially. And there's a kind of a calm that comes. I mean, I've not really used a lot of painkillers in my life, but people swear by them. They enjoy those experiences. So, there's a way that it can kind of bring us into some kind of state of peace in a way, chemically, while we're dealing with this. And one of the things that we find clinically with folks who are repeatedly in a freeze response is that their brain's kind of being washed with these chemicals so much that it can kind of tend to go more towards depression, because that's the effect of the chemicals on the brain when they have a lot of it. But from an evolutionary survival sense, it was a grace. But you're not really going to have to feel dying, right? We're going to chemically reduce the experience of that pain, right? Everything's going to die down a bit. So that does happen when we move into freeze. And some of you might be able to track that in your nervous systems or in your bodies. Like you're just kind of floaty feeling. Others of you may not. And either way, it's totally fine. So what I want you to notice now is like we're kind of at the top of the curve here. And then I'm going to go back down. I'm going to go back down. And that's a deactivation. Like going back down the curve is a deactivation. And that means that our body has determined that the threat is no longer as threatening or has disappeared somehow, resolved itself. So we don't need to keep producing the freeze response, and we don't need to keep producing sympathetic arousal. One of the things that happens though, if you are coming out of freeze, if you notice, you're going to go right down through sympathetic arousal. And sometimes that can be very shocking. A lot of times. If you've been in freeze and then you're a little dissociated or a little numb or a little confused, and then you feel, sympathetic arousal. Wow, that's an intense experience. Feeling fear and, but your body's moving you down that activation cycle. So you eventually will hopefully emerge back in the green. Safety, all is well, peace, right? We resettle again, we reground. So I do want to take questions if there are any questions. This can get very complex, and just want to see what questions there might be about any of this.
I can share one question that came in as you were talking about that we're meant to have this flexibility between the different stages. And so there's a question about, is trying to stay in the green 24/7 a cause of spiritual bypassing?
Well, it's a good question. I think that that's complex. Maybe my answer would be maybe, or it would be maybe. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I think that we intrinsically want to stay in green. A fair amount of the time, we feel better. Our bodies are healthier physiologically if we have safety, or we can digest our food, we can receive nourishment, we rest better, and rest is best, so to speak. We do feel a lot better cognitively when we get rest. And so we all naturally want to spend a fair amount of time in green, and we were designed for that. Now, to answer your question, I'm going to talk about some hybrids, okay? So this is about threat. This whole diagram is about the threat response, right? That arrow on the side on the left. But there are times when we are in the yellow and we are having a great time, right? Dancing, laughing, having fun with our friends, moving. Some people end up playing sports. My son loves to be tickled. He likes to wake up in the morning. He was, "Mama, tickle me," and he goes straight into yellow, but in the most gleeful, happy, joyful way possible. And so because of the way our nerves are designed, we can have information that travels over multiple sets of branches of the nervous system at the same time. So we can have a yellow plus a green, and that's play. That's fun. We can have a green plus a red. So let's think about what that might be, right? That might be a state of deep meditation where our bodies are quiet, just quiet. We don't have a lot going on. We may feel even weightless. Some of our best days of meditation, right? Feel very peaceful. Everything's calm, but we're happy. We feel good, but we're kind of immobilized. We're sitting. We're not moving, right? Sometimes states some places of intimacy, right? I mean, sex, like a great sexual encounter, a romantic encounter, we're going to hit probably if all these states at some point. Cuddling or just snuggling even with a pet that you dearly and enjoy. You might be in the green and the red at the same time because you're really relaxed. You're really comfortable. You're kind of immobilized, but you're happy. I hope that makes sense. Spiritual bypassing, I think we're chasing, right? We're chasing something, and sometimes we get upset if we are not in that place that we want to be in. And in the flexibility and the fluidity of the nervous system, we understand that we're going to move through a lot of these states naturally. They're supposed to happen. And if you have a person who's very bypassy spiritually and they just want to be in green all the time and they're denying their yellow or they're denying their red, I'm going to just say that they're not going to get away with that for very long. The nervous system's not going to allow that. If there's a true threat, that is a deep hardwiring in our bodies. Our bodies are responding outside of our consciousness. So we're just not going to get very far. You might find some of those persons very kind of quietly judgmental, right? Like they're kind of irritable. So they're not, they're not going to get away from their nervous system. That's the beauty, the double-edged sword about it, right? So any other questions that come about when you think about yourself, here's the people in relationship to any of these states or how we move from any of the states?
There's a question. If continuously exposed to arousals, does the activation become permanent and irreversible so that the deactivation becomes difficult or impossible? How do you get better at deactivating? Great question.
Yeah, great question. And we're going to get into that in more detail. I would never want to think there was a situation that was hopeless. First of all, that we could never get better or we could never deactivate, right? No, I think that would be quite rare. It's just not the way that we're designed. Certainly with chronic, intense traumas, we can have inflexibility that arises. And we're going to talk about that. I think we're talking about that next, but let me look. I want to answer that question as we move along, if that's okay. Okay, yes, here we are. So regulation versus dysregulation. And this is important. And I want to admit that I went back yesterday and spent a lot of time figuring out how to really differentiate, because I believe the way that we're all talking about dysregulation and regulation is not quite accurate. And so what I want to share with you is that what has been described in this drawing that we just went through, this diagram, that is regulation. If we have a threat, we need to respond to it. And that is our nervous system functioning in a healthy, fluid, balanced way. We're getting proper signaling that's occurring between inner and outer, et cetera, and our response patterns. That is regulation, right? A lot of people are equating regulation with being in green. And that's not really what it is. Okay. So what are we talking about when we talk about dysregulated? Because I thought when we talked about dysregulated, then that just means that I'm in sympathetic arousal or I'm in the red and I'm not in the green and I feel dysregulated. We are, I see it so much. I'm guilty of it myself, that we're talking about that as dysregulation. Okay. Dysregulation is really when the system has gone awry. Okay. Well, how does the system go awry? Let's look at our lives. Let's look at the modern world. We have chronic stress. We have trauma that's unresolved. We have ancestral trauma, right? So we now know epigenetically that we can feel the effects of trauma in our bodies from up to 3 generations away. So we don't even have to have experienced that trauma personally for it to affect us in our nervous systems, right? That will blow your mind if you really think about it. And it's also like, Oh my gosh, another thing. So you'll hear me laughing, right? Laughing is therapeutic. So when we look at our lives, we have the things that happened before we were even born. We have things that happen while we were in utero. We have the things that happen maybe in our birth. We have the things that happen in our early childhood. And, we've had things that happen after that, right? And trauma is resolvable, but often some work has to be done to resolve those traumas, whatever they might be, as they impact our nervous system. So when we talk about dysregulation, what we're saying is that the nervous system, because of the stresses, and those come in different categories of what's impacted our nervous system, those have accumulated in a way where our response patterns have gotten inflexible, where we don't fluidly move between these states or these branches of our nervous system, where we don't maybe deactivate fully into green, right? Where we're kind of kept in the yellow or kept in the red, or we just move between the yellow and the red. That's a kind of a dysregulated nervous system state, because it doesn't have full access to all of our levels of being, right? That is dysregulation. Now, we also evolutionarily, we are biased towards the negative. And I'm sure you've experienced this in your students or yourself. We focus on the bad predominantly. What's wrong, right? Part of that's healthy because we're trying to work through a threat that we feel. And then part of it just sends our nervous system into these chronic states of stress, which then can cause dysregulation. And a dysregulated nervous system is scanning for threat all the time, hypervigilant. Oh, that could be a threat. Oh, that could be a threat. That could be a threat all the time. Okay. And it's feeding that back in. So we get this improper signaling. We don't even see the good stuff anymore. We don't see that cute little puppy over there, or that little baby, or how beautiful that sunset is. We don't even notice it, right? Which is, it just robs us, right, of a good part of our life experience and the joy of being human. So what we do want to do, and I think this is maybe answering your question, great question, is we have to start consciously, intentionally feeding back into our nervous systems experiences that feel safe, safer, good, pleasurable, even neutral. Because when you're very biased towards the negative, even just neutral is a huge movement towards regulation. I hope that makes sense, and I'm happy to take questions about what I've just shared as well.
I'm monitoring the chat. Nothing has come in yet, but I will definitely let you know. Yeah.
Perfect. I assume maybe then I explained it well. Okay. All right. So we're gonna move now into our time together in this workshop presentation. We're gonna move into how do we regulate? And there are many ways to regulate, but I'm going to share a few with you. I don't want to overwhelm you, but I do want to give you some good handholds. Some of you are going to like some more than others. Okay. Some are going to be, oh, that works so well for me. And then for others, you're like, oh, I don't love that one. Okay. So, but these are all very natural things that we can do. They're very simple, and we're going to experience a few of them together as well. So let's have you shift your nervous systems a little bit. We're going to move towards more engagement than we've had the last few 20, 30 minutes or so. So strategies to help your nervous system regulate more. Okay. And this is deactivate more into the hopefully green or lower bands of sympathetic yellow. And also just regulate. which means that we're kind of coming into more harmony, more coherence in our total nervous system. So we're going to talk about orienting. Orienting is the simplest thing that one could imagine. We try to make it complicated in our minds, but it's really very simple. And it's just the idea of looking around. Okay. And we're going to do a practice around this. I'm going to demonstrate it for you. You're going to try it yourself. So orienting is one, looking around, kind of noticing what's in your physical surroundings. Another one is resourcing. Okay, so part of the beginning of the presentation, looking at that pictures is like, well, let's bring in some resource right now. Like, oh, look at those smiles. And oh, that, that lady's like in her groove or whatever. Like, that's great. That feels good to me. Those like the pictures of nature, like that feels good too. These are resources. And we have countless resources in our lives. And sometimes we just don't really take advantage of them, or we don't notice that they're there. So what I'm going to be inviting you today to do is to let a resource in, let yourself experience a resource that you have. This doesn't have to be really complicated, like you've got $5 million in your savings account. It can be you like the smell of your coffee. Okay, let's not make this grandiose. Okay, let's make it simple, accessible, and practical. These resources, grounding practices, right? So what happens when we get activated? A lot of people talk about their energy kind of can move up, right? And sometimes even out, right? So we're calling in a movement back down, right? In grounding. And we're going to go into some of those practices more as well. And very important as humans in our human family, co-regulating, right? So this might be you're getting coffee in, the faculty room and you're chit-chatting with someone there, right? You're just kind of off-gassing a little bit from what's going on and just co-regulating. Oh, how are you? What's going on with you? How's so-and-so? Are you feeling better? This is all co-regulation, right? We do this all the time and we thrive doing this for the most part. Okay. All right, orienting. So now we're going to get into some practices. And so if you want to adjust yourself in any way, if you want to make yourself comfortable in any kind of way to do this, I would invite you to do that. If your shoes are uncomfortable, maybe you want to take those off, whatever works for you. If you're hot or cold, just notice that. Maybe the light in your office is really bright. Maybe you want to dim the light a little bit, or you just feel into your environment right now. Feel into any little corrections you might want to make if you can. If you feel like, oh, that's really silly, Dr. Cat, then don't do anything. You can just try the exercise as is without adjusting anything. But we often do this in a clinical setting. We might, oh, how does that light feel to you? Can I adjust that? Or we might give a client a blanket, or we're working with the nervous system. Okay. So orienting is the process of looking around. Some of you that may practice mindfulness, you have some practice around this, noticing, like a visual mindfulness, a kind of a simple seeing, I like to call it. And I have this picture of just a sweet deer here. We have so many of them here in Colorado. Anyway, I don't usually get them in my yard, but I have before in different places that I've lived. They're all around. But I like to think of the deer when I think about orienting, because if you think about a deer, if you've ever seen them, first of all, they're very much like socially intertwined. So if one deer goes on alert, they're all on alert, right? They've all gotten the signal. But imagine yourself being a deer. You're just resting. You're maybe, you've already eaten, you're just taking a rest. And you hear a little rustle somewhere around you. So what happens? Your ears perk up and you turn in the direction of that noise, that rustling. That is orienting. It's orienting to a sound that you heard. We do it all the time, or honking or noises. We're looking, oh, what's over there? What's going on over there? We're trying to figure out, is it a threat to me or not? Right? Is it a threat? Okay. No, it's not a threat. Go back to what you were doing. This is orienting, and it's a basic kind of human, it's a evolutionary response in all the different species, all of our ancestors. So I'm going to demonstrate it for you, and then I'm going to have you try it yourself. And I want you to notice kind of how you felt before and also how you felt afterwards. So you don't have to do this for yourself, but I'm going to narrate what I'm doing so you know what I'm doing, since we're not in the same physical space. So I'm in my office and I'm just looking around. That's a project I'm working on. So I've got a few whiteboards in the corner and a window here, which is providing a lot of really bright light, strong Colorado sunshine. I have some plants. So I'm just looking at those. And all I'm really doing right now is I'm just noticing what's in my physical space. Just checking it out. That's all I'm doing. I'm not getting into a lot of story about it or telling myself anything about the objects. I'm just looking at them. So I would like each of you in your own physical spaces, if you can, if it's not dangerous and you're not driving a car, if it's safe for you, I would like to invite you to do the same. Just organically let yourself look around. Just notice what's there, what's in your physical space with you. And whenever you feel finished with that, I'm going to invite you to just let your eyes rest on an object that feels interesting to your eyes. Just rest your eyes. Okay, good. And now I want to have you just check into yourself again and notice what you're feeling in your body. How are you feeling now? And you can respond in the chat if you like.
I'm getting calm, very relaxed, exclamation mark.
Great.
Nostalgic.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And then take a moment. We're just going to take it a step further. We'll do a little free therapy here. Notice what it's like to feel calm, if you feel calm, or whatever that is, whatever it is that you felt. Just let yourself notice what it's like to feel that.
We have another comment. It was nice to look around and try not to attach narratives or storylines.
Yes, exactly. Just present moment awareness. That's all. Nothing else required of you. So some of you now are experiencing some deactivation in your nervous system, right? Maybe moving more into ventral vagal. And why does this happen, right? Why is this looking around my room help? Well, what did you find when you looked around your room? Was there anyone trying to attack you in the corner, or a little tiger perched somewhere imminently trying to attack you? No, this is your stuff. And you're probably relatively safe where you are, hopefully. So our nervous system attunes to that and says, oh, well, it's not really a threat here. Maybe there was that email an hour ago, but right now in this moment, it's okay. It's calm. Nothing bad is happening, right? And our nervous system responds to that very organically. Okay. So people might sometimes report in this, they feel more grounded, settled, just feel better. Sometimes they'll have, oh, my chest opened up a little bit, or I took a deep breath. That will happen, right? There's more down regulation, more calm coming into our nervous systems. And by the way, this is like a pill you can take, a little supplement. You can add this in throughout your day. If you're having a moment, just look around, take a moment. Some people do it in the morning or the evening before they go to bed, or just as needed. So you can do this very easily, and no one even needs to know what you're doing. You can just start helping yourself regulate a bit more. Okay. All right, we're going to move on. Resourcing. So we talked about this. So resourcing, it could mean a lot of different things. It could be a place that you really love. It could be a person, a group, a pet, a memory from the past that, oh, I loved that time. Oh, that vacation was amazing. So glad we did that. So what we can do to help pull our nervous systems into more regulation, if we've gotten kind of rigid or stuck, or just move more into green, is actively, intentionally remembering something that feels good. So I want to invite you all to do that, and you pick anything you want. Can be very simple, be a nice conversation you had, but just take a moment and bring into yourself a person, a conversation, experience that does feel good. You can close your eyes if you want, keep them open. And just notice what happens as you do that. Just for a moment, just let yourself immerse yourself in that resource, whatever that is, or whoever that is. Let yourself just drink it in. Just notice any subtle shifts or changes that happen as you do that. You're welcome to share any reflections from this. And sometimes we put these resources around us when we work, maybe a picture of someone we love or a place we love. We can put our resources in our physical environment, even if we haven't already. You're having a difficult conversation with someone, perhaps, and you look over at that photo of that vacation you took, and it's like, well, that feels a little better, you know? So we want to use our resources to modulate our life experience when we feel like we're kind of going too far in a threatened direction or feeling overly threatened. Sometimes we just kind of get stuck in a threat response. We want to really actively, intentionally pull in things that do feel good. Sometimes if we're kind of stuck in freeze, we need to move a little bit. We don't need to move ecstatically coming out of a frozen block of ice, but we might just need to stretch a little bit. Let ourselves move around slowly and remind ourselves that we're not stuck, right? That can be a resource, even just a little bit of movement, right? So we're going to move on just to our last experiential. And this is the practice of grounding. I referred to this before. Now I have a picture of the toes in the field. Could be a lawn, of anyone's lawn, really. But I want to invite you all, like, coming into grounding is inviting us to come into more settledness, to feel connected to something, even if what we're connected to is a chair that we're sitting in, we can still feel connected to that. So grounding is a lot about feeling physical support. Sometimes that's a piece of furniture that's supporting us. Sometimes it's feeling like the ground underneath our feet, whether that's actual dirt or just the floor, is there for us, like to remind ourselves that we do have some very basic resources to help ourselves. So just wherever you are now, you can, if you want to, you can imagine, like, what if your feet were on the earth? Maybe it's going back to that beach where your feet were kind of nestled in the sand and you have the sandy toes, or maybe it's your backyard or some other place that you like. You could just envision having your feet on the ground. And see if you can just imagine feeling the contact of the ground on your feet. Feeling it's there, it's stable, it supports you. And just as a gift to yourself, just give yourself a few moments to feel that connection to the ground. Noticing what it feels like, even to imagine it. Noticing what happens in your body as you connect. Just let yourself rest a little bit. Ground is there for you. It's holding you up. Yeah, good. And then if anyone wants to share a reflection, you can in the chat. Anything that happened for you, where you went. I might have put you all to sleep with this. That wasn't my intention, but deep relaxation is a wonderful place to be. If you felt into some relaxation or some things came forward for you, it's wonderful. Okay. So having gone there and having some experiences with bringing your nervous system more through deactivation and ways to do that, very simple ways, I want to turn now towards your student population. I know we're getting somewhat close to our time and I want to have plenty of time for questions. So your students. Your students, as you know, as you're coming out of this pandemic, some are in various states of coming out of it. Some haven't come out of it. Some are more out of it. I in my client population of young people, college age or a little bit out of college, there's really seems to be a wide variety of places where students are. Some of your students had chronic stress before the pandemic. Financial, economic, racial, many reasons, physiological illnesses, or just lack of health in the body. Students come from many different backgrounds. A lot of them have dealt with abuse growing up, very difficult circumstances, immigrations, especially in Miami populations. That can be really fresh. And their own adverse childhood experiences of various kinds, including divorces and separations and all the different ACEs, as we refer to them, as well as the ancestral trauma. So your students, like you, right, are human and they've had some difficulty, and some of them more so than others. These are things you know. So when we talk about how can we harness this nervous system to be better with our students, right? We don't want to be their therapist per se, but as a faculty, you're an influential part of their lives, in their scholastic experience, which is a very formative experience for most students, right? For most people, their educational experience has quite a big impact on them. And we hope it's a good one. So without needing to be a therapist to your students, what can we do, knowing what we know now? So if a student arrives to you either on the phone or by email, you can even read it, or in person, you can sometimes really assess where they are. Are they in the green? Are they in the yellow? Are they in the red? So kind of giving them a spot check, and you kind of feel it in your body. If you're pretty much in the green and you feel relaxed, and a student comes in yellow, you might start notice you're feeling kind of threatened, right? You feel anxious or irritated, right? Something can come up for you. So you want to assess where they are, and also kind of notice where you are, right? How do you feel interacting with the student? You really matter. The student is probably trying to co-regulate with you in some way. whether you like that or not, and where you are really matters. So as much as you can, and we're all imperfect, see if you can see if you can self-regulate a little bit. If a student is coming in a state where they're really activated, if they're in the yellow, or even red, like when a student goes into red, you might start feeling really checked out. Like, I can't really pay attention to I don't even hear what they said. The last few minutes I blanked. That's a good indication to you that your student might be in freeze, so we want to start attuning to ourselves and students with this map of the nervous system. And if your student's coming in ventral vagal, some of the things you're going to see are that they're in the green. You're going to see eye contact. They can make eye contact with you, right? It doesn't mean they just stare at you without breaking eye contact. That's very unnatural. But they are willing to make eye contact with you. You sense a calm. They're engaged, right? You have kind of a repartee, right, back and forth. They could be curious. They can be open, and they can receive what you're saying, maybe without becoming very defensive or irritable or upset, right? This would be this would be great. This would be a great student encounter, right, with a student who's in green. Now, a lot of students are probably going to be coming in this yellow band and sympathetic arousal, right? So, they're going to be experiencing this increased heartbeat. Their breathing might be really shallow. And you might notice some of this start happening in you because there's an invitation to co-regulate, and your body is going to respond to someone who's in sympathetic arousal by mirroring in some way what's happening. You might notice they're anxious or worried, all the things we talked about before. You might sense like there's some fear. You can see this in people's faces, right? How they appear in their bodies, how they engage with you. You can read so much about where they are. They might be irritated, right? I certainly have had the experience of being irritated with some of my professors at certain times. They get a grade. I've had students before, they get a grade, they don't like it, right? They come in. Sometimes, especially the ones who are the high performers, right? They're very irritated if they get 2 points off at something. So you'll feel that. And in your best self and your best day, you are not reacting to it. Okay. The dorsal vagal student, a student in freeze, right? You're going to see they're kind of checked out. They might be confused. They may not be able to track or follow what you're saying. They may not be able to respond to you appropriately with the right content. They might be unresponsive altogether or very slow to respond. Like a lot of time seems to go by before they're able to respond to you. We talk about this in, psych, flat affect, right? Stone face. It's hard for me to do because I'm typically really animated. Flat speech, just no prosody in the voice, just flat, even, right? Some people complain about professors being this way sometimes, or just you feel they're checked out, right? So these are clues, right? That your student is in this actually a very high level of activation, that they are so unresponsive. Okay. And so I wanted to share some ideas with each of you around things you can do in interactions with students, also just interacting with them in the classroom setting to help your nervous system, but also help their nervous systems really be able to process what's happening effectively so they don't get stuck or overly triggered or overly activated. No system is perfect. But these are some ideas, and I wanted you all to have something that you could do or try to see how it goes. A lot of you are addressing very provocative material, and it can be triggering for students. And so what can we do to help? One of the things that we talk about, and someone mentioned it before, is, I'm slowing down. Right? Slowing down is a way of helping our nervous systems being able to process the input that's coming without getting overly activated. So one of the things that we say about trauma is it's something that happens too fast. Something comes at us too fast. So what do? The antidote, we slow things down. We pause. It's like then the person can kind of digest, right? So in a conversation, maybe with a student who's really frozen, you might really need to slow down very intentionally. Slow your speech, right? You may do it in the classroom setting. If there's difficult material, pause, right? Let students digest a little bit. This is the most important thing, really, is if you can stay regulated. Because if you can stay regulated in your nervous system, then you can help others around you regulate. And maybe that seems like a burden, but on our best days, we have this superpower and we can do it. We can stay regulated. And then we can co-regulate with others, with the students, even in the classroom setting, right? We can find a moment of levity, right? For instance, and kind of help difficult material move through. We can be welcoming. Sometimes we don't feel welcomed in a way, but as a leader in the classroom or, on campus, like we can extend warmth. We can extend welcome to our students and those around us. And that's sending folks a signal of safety, like, oh, it's okay to engage with me. It's okay to be here right now, right? There's no space that's 100% safe. That is unrealistic, right? Life is filled with threat, but we can create little pockets of warmth and welcoming and more safety. And those help nervous systems deactivate and regulate a lot. So you may have other ideas of signals of safety. Maybe it's a smile, or just we can think about our faces, like when someone's really nice to us or sweet to us, like there's a certain kind of softness that comes into their face, right? We can intentionally bring that into our face. We can speak in more prosodic ways. We can let our faces animate more, which can be very inviting in our social engagement systems. And, when you do have to present difficult material or you have to share something that's difficult with a student, you may give them a little bit of an advance warning, or, oh, I'm going to have to share something difficult now. It might be hard to hear this. So then that student orients to that. Oh, okay, there's going to be a moment where I might feel a little off or bad. Okay, so you give them a heads up. It can be very helpful because then their nervous system can get mobilized to process what's happening. Movement. Can you go for walks with students? Can you take a walk with a colleague, instead of sitting at your desk? Or even movement in the classroom. This may sound a little strange. Maybe some of you are doing it. I don't know, but having students stand up and stretch, like a little stretch break, or just kind of moving around, drinking water, whatever it is that they need to do, because our bodies we're sensory, right? So as we move, movement helps us process information. Yeah. And last but definitely not least, if you feel a student is really highly dysregulated, they will not be able to be successful in the classroom. And there's only so much you can really do for a student like that as a faculty member. So the best thing might be to refer them out to the resources on campus available in mental health, so they can really get some targeted, one-on-one support for their nervous systems and whatever traumas they may have been through. Yeah. So I want to, thank you all. And I'm leaving, I assume you can get this presentation. I'm leaving you with a few resources if you want to go further. and dive in a bit more. If you've enjoyed this or just feel you got something meaningful out of it, you might want to go further. I really highly recommend watching this video from the Trauma Foundation. Is about 8 to 9 minutes long, and it encapsulates so much about the nervous system that's really helpful and important to know. So sharing that. And yes, we have a little time for Q&A. I want to invite for Q&A, if you wanted to raise your hand, if you felt okay being on camera, you could just voice your question. Sometimes it's easier to voice the question than to write it out. Or if you had a question or comment, you're also welcome to continue to share in the chat.
Eva, somebody is wondering if you can go back to the previous slide, please, with the resources. Thank you. Yeah.
I can leave this.
Yeah. There's a question that came in the chat when you were talking about the deactivating strategies. And this person is wondering how it differs from mindfulness meditation.
There's a lot of crossover between mindfulness meditation and some of the deactivating strategies. Now, some deactivating strategies can be movement based or singing, moving to rhythm. Those may cross less over with mindfulness, but I think in the mindfulness world, and Eliana, you might be able to share more here too, given your expertise, that it's kind of about being mindful, just being mindful in general. So what does it mean to be mindful? For me, what it has meant and means that we're more fully in our experience. And we might be tracking different things that are happening as we're in experience, but we're also letting ourselves immerse in an experience. I don't know if that's enough of an answer to the question, but I think there would be things that look the same, and I think there would be things that look different. But it is a lot about proprioception and like letting ourselves really feel, oh, what's it like when my heart beats a little slower? Like, oh, curiosity, like, oh, that feels nice. And then I noticed that my shoulders drop, and then oh, I noticed that my jaw relaxed a little bit. Interesting. This is the nervous system regulation pieces around the somatic healing are a lot like this, feel a lot like this.
Thank you. I have another question for you. So do you have any suggestions for ways of adapting orienting exercises for environment? I'm sorry, there's like a lot of dog commotion. I have a dog that's actually crying because she's in a lot of pain. She's with a family member. So if you hear crying, and then there's another dog that's barking. I'm so sorry. So I'll try to get through this question quickly. So ways of adapting orienting exercises for environments where students may not feel completely safe. Some of us teach in prisons, schools that have experienced violence, etc.
So great question and important. It goes back to there's no 100% safe space, right? Even in the best case scenario. So what we might suggest is orienting to something in the environment that does feel better or neutral. So maybe it's the way the light shines in from the window. And this would be very individual for each nervous system. But the invitation to them around orienting might be just noticing something that feels a little bit more pleasant or a little bit more neutral. With highly traumatized, dysregulated populations, we want to start working those shades of gray, right? It's not what's joyful and ecstatic, right? It's going to be like, what just feels okay? So you want to kind of pare down to a range that, a nervous system or a group of nervous systems could access. And usually in every environment, sometimes it's like, oh, I just like that color of the spot on the floor, or I liked that I can see the tree out the window. You know, sometimes it can be very, very simple. Does that help?
I got it. Yes, thanks.
Okay, great. Well, I know we're almost very much at time, so I want to invite everyone to just take a little stretch. You've been here, for those of you that stayed the whole time, you've been here for 2 hours. Just stretch, like move your body. You can even kind of like some shaking can be nice, like some intentional, just kind of shaking your hands or wiggling your feet, kind of just letting yourself move a little bit, bring some movement back in, to resource yourself. And I want to thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for receiving this presentation. And I hope that it lands well and that it plants seeds and that you have some beautiful sprouts that come from this work today.
Eva, I invite you to look at the chat. You're getting lots of thank yous and other messages.
Gracias. Gracias a ustedes. Sí. Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Beautiful. And enjoy, to orient to pleasure, find things of enjoyment in your life. You want to intersperse, like give yourself full permission to feel joy, even, or feel good, feel pleasure, even when there's stress. It's okay. We need both, So thank you very much. And thank you so much for having me here.